Hello YouTubies, I'm Grant, this is The Garage, this is Granty's Garage, and in this video I'm going to help you prepare for your next MOT. This is my 2003 Ford Focus, which over the last couple of months I have been turning into a budget max power style car. Everything you see that I've done to it so far has cost less than £400, a fair bit less actually, and it is now time to think about getting it back on the road. When I took ownership of this car, the MOT had expired. The previous owner had taken it off the road with that in mind, knowing it needed some work to be done before it was going to be roadworthy again. He since bought another car. I took the opportunity, took this one off him because I'd been looking for a project to modify. But now comes the time, I want to get it back on the road. So I'm going to take it for its MOT soon, which, if you're not from the UK, is your yearly inspection for a vehicle to be roadworthy if it's over 3 years old. So there's a number of things I need to get ready and done, and there's a number of things that you should check if your car is soon due its MOT, and we're going to run through those. As I mentioned, an MOT is a yearly inspection in the UK on a car over 3 years old. Many countries have their own version of this kind of test. It stands for a motor ordnance test. Other countries call it inspections and other things. I'd be curious, if you're not from the UK, what's it called in your country? And if there's anything that you would need to consider not in this video, I'm curious. Let me know in the comments below what that might be. But for now, let's get into it. Now, for the first part of this, we're going to look at the lights and the electronics. I'm going to start with the back and then I'm going to go to the front. This is helpful to have somebody to help you do, because as you run through when the lights should action, brakes, reverse lights, indicators, etc., you obviously can't look at the back of your car at the same time. So if you can get someone to help you, great. If not, you could do what I'm doing and video the back of the car and then come back and check the footage. It's going to be worth mentioning here, the lights in the bottom of the bumper, which include the reverse light, have been changed by me as part of this project. You can see that in a video if you're interested. And these rear lights units have come from another car, and I realise at this point I've not actually tested them myself. This rear central brake light has also been in and out as I've gone through, like, wrapping the car and changing some pieces. So let's find out if they all work. Right, you won't be able to see me in the back of my head, maybe, but I'm going to run through a sequence of testing the different lights and see what the bulbs do. In this car, I'm hoping that I'm going to get away with not needing to start it just yet. Some cars may need to be started for all of the lights to actually work. So if you go and turn on the lights and they don't all come on, but you don't have the power on, or you maybe don't have the engine running, maybe they will not run. So we'll start with the side lights. I should have 2 red lights on each side. I'm going to go for a brake. Should have 3 bright red lights, 1 each side and 1 in the middle. I'm going to go for reverse, which only needs to be 1 light at the back, white light in the UK for the MOT. Go back into reverse, just try that twice. Going to go for the hazards. Should have 2 flashing yellow lights, 1 each side. And I'm going to indicate left. And I'm going to indicate right. And that's the back lights tested. So as you can see, I have an issue with the marker light, side light, whatever you want to call it, which is effectively when you have your front headlights on or side lights, you'll have 1 in the back to indicate where the back of the car is. But the interesting thing is this is the same bulb for the brake light. If you didn't know, these bulbs are called dual filament, meaning they have 2 different filaments, one brighter than the other. The brake signal sends power for the brighter light, hence the braking, and the lower signal is for the dimmer filament. So that would suggest one of the filaments in that bulb has gone, so I'm going to replace it. In this car, that's as simple as lift out the light, unclip it and change the bulb. Not going to bother showing that because that's different with every car. But if you find any bulbs are out, easiest thing you could do is go and replace them. And now with that bulb replaced, the back is okay. You can fail an MOT from having lights that are not working. Obviously, the more important they are, the more major the fail would be. If your brake lights are not working, that could fail your MOT. For the sake of a few quid for a bulb, always worth having a look. Normally very easy to change, even if you're not a car person. Let's move on to the front. Now, unfortunately, the audio for this was just that of the car running, because you will need the car running in most cases for the headlights to come on, and I didn't engage my microphone properly. What you need to check at the front of the car, as I'm showing now, is that the side lights come on the first click or the first stage of your headlight switch. This then is followed by the headlights themselves on the next click. As you can clearly see, they are here. And then you also want to check your full or your high beams. And then you're going to want to also check that your indicators at the front are working, for which you can use the hazard switch. Apologies if you're picking up the noise of the car running, but while you've got the hazards on, or the warning lights, whatever you want to call them, just go and check your side markers are also blinking. I've already checked the other side is the same, so it looks like the lights are all good. Having replaced that bulb at the rear, happy to move on to the next bit. The last one you want to check at the back is your number plate lights. These are the lights that obviously light your number plate for the feds to be able to check who you are when you're racing around street racing at night. These are normally okay as long as the bulb cannot be seen. So if you had the bulb hanging down, that would technically be a fail. They shouldn't be able to see the actual bulb, just the light from it. So if you have any damage to anything here, anything hanging down, anything missing, that could become a problem for your MOT. So as long as from behind the car, you can't see the bulb, you can only see the light from it, and the lights are functioning, you're good. The next lights you want to be concerned with would be on the inside. This is obviously my dashboard and, well, my gauge cluster. If I had any ABS or airbag warning lights, or indeed an engine management light, that can get picked up on an MOT. Fortunately, I'm just very low on petrol, and that other red warning light is that the handbrake is on, which is stopping me rolling into the other car out the front. So in this respect, no lights is good. The MOT is mainly concerned with the safety of the vehicle for its occupants and other road users. So it's a good idea if you can see out of your windscreen. So the next thing to check is going to be, do your windscreen wipers work? Very good. So I'm happy with that. The other thing that you should check is actually just the condition of the blade and the rubber. They're normally pretty simple. Lift them up, have a look. You want to check that it's not perished or split. These are relatively new, so I know that they're okay. And I'm quite happy with that one. The other thing that you need to be able to do is obviously squirt fluid onto the windshield to be able to clear it. As you can see, I've done a lot of work to this car, so bits have been off, bits have been on. I was quite surprised I didn't get any airbag lights from when I took out the dash and kept reconnecting the battery to move the car while I was working on that. But as you can see, I might be missing something. So I'm going to put the washer jets in. Now that they're back in, make sure you test your washer nozzles. Make sure they can squirt water on the window screen and they're not missing it. You don't want it flying over the car, you don't want it too low, you want it going into the low middle so that the wipers can also pick it up. All working fine. If their fluid in there is empty, obviously top it up. It will come into fluids later. Inside the car, you want to make sure all the seat belts lock into the seatbelt clips, and that the webbing, which is the black material, normally black, in a seatbelt, is not frayed at any location. And you also want to make sure that the driver's seat locks into position, because that could be a fail if it could move. The next part that we'll be looking at as part of the MOT preparations is the brakes. Obviously a very important safety feature. They're what stop the car. So there's a number of things you're going to want to check that your brakes are going to pass the MOT, or find out if they need some attention. You want to check that the brake pedal has a nice firm feel to it and it comes back. You'll want to do that when the car is on and running. The next thing to check when doing brakes is your discs and your pads. You don't actually need to take the wheel off in most cases to do this. I'm doing this to show you, but you need to check your brake pads. If you don't know, they live here. This little piece of in here where my finger is touching that's contacting this disc, that is the material that is worn down on a brake pad over time. There needs to be sufficient material in there. If you've got at least 1 centimetre, you're probably okay. When you're checking your discs, what you need as an indicator of the wear to check it is just check if there's a lip here, because that will show that the inside has worn down beyond potentially its limits. You do that simply by just moving up, and then you'll see on these ones they're actually not too bad. But if you've got a very big lip there, you may be
may need to consider changing the brake discs, certainly in order for it to pass the MOT.
Part of your brake checks should include the handbrake. Number of ways that you can test this. If you haven't already been given an indication it's not working to its full extent when you're out driving the car, you could go park it on a hill, put the handbrake on, it should hold the car in place. If you don't have a hill, you could put the handbrake on and try and give the car a push. My garage does slightly incline downwards as you go out. Handbrake is on. And that's not going anywhere. But I also already know mine works. You will want to double check your brake fluid is at the level it needs to be. In most cars where the engine's at the front, this will be on the back wall here somewhere. The fluid needs to be somewhere between the max mark, which is this one here. It says max, but the camera can't quite pick it up. And mine says minimum over here, which is following this line. And if I give it a little shake, you can see this darker line that ends at the top of my finger is where the fluid is. So that's all good.
The other thing you'll want to consider with brakes is if you've got any grinding or squeaking as you're driving along, then that may also suggest your brakes will need some attention. The next area for consideration we're going to look at is the steering and the suspension. This is just to make sure the car is running well on the road and ultimately you have control of it. That's what makes it part of the safety test. First thing to do with suspension, really simple, is called the bounce test, where you press down on each of the four corners of the car, and the car should immediately be absorbing in the suspension, the shocks and the springs, the force that you've put in. Therefore, the force you have pushed it down with, the car will not respond with, and it should settle down quickly. If I go to the front here and do this, I'll push it quite hard and quite fast, and not nearly the same force has come back. The car settled very quickly. You can do this in the rear as well, and you should. And the same thing. I'd now go and do all four corners. That would indicate to me that shocks and springs are probably okay, but we're still going to go and have a look. Part of the MOT will be checking the suspension on the car, so it's advisable for you to do a visual inspection yourself. You want to look at your shock towers and just see if they're leaking. You just feel around the top of them there. Again, you may not necessarily need to take the wheel off, and you just want to check your springs, probably give them a clean and just check that they're not corroded too bad and look like they might fail. Now, unfortunately, the audio was ghastly at this point as well. So, talking you through what we're looking at here, the last bit for steering and suspension that's within your control. If you're not already driving the car around and having an indication there may be a problem here, you can start the car so that you make sure you have the power steering pump in play, and then you're going to want to turn the wheels all the way to the left and all the way to the right, and then just make sure there isn't any knocking or grinding when you're doing so. That would be making sure that you have got a full range of motion that is uncompromised in the steering. However, as we say, if you have already been driving the car around, you would have probably noticed this in the normal operation anyway. And for a last note on the suspension, if you are driving your car around, you have any significant bumps or clunks, going over bumps, going through holes, turning corners sharply, prepare for the fact that potentially you may have some suspension components that may need attention, either to pass the MOT if they're in a particularly bad state, or they may present as advisories to get sorted when and found during the MOT. These will likely be things like bushings and potentially joints on arms. That's the most common cause for those sorts of noises, but by checking the springs and the shocks, you can check that the significant components in that respect are okay, and then get them changed if they need doing. You can obviously do them yourself. The next section we'll address is driver visibility. Obviously very safe for drivers to see where they're going. As you can see out of the windscreen, we've got a lovely view of what is a sunset over the other car. But when doing this, make sure you haven't got things hanging from here, because some MOT testers will not have they won't be so inclined to take them down for the test. Check that the mirrors are functioning and they are not cracked. The other thing for visibility is you're going to want to check the condition of your windscreen. Big enough crack in the windscreen, especially if it's in the driver's field of vision, will be a fail.
This is the bit I am worried about for this car, because there is a crack in the windscreen down here. You can't really see it from inside, it doesn't impact the view, and it was an advisory previously, the last MOT for this car. I may get the windscreen replaced before I take it, because that crack is too big to save it. But make sure you check the windscreen before you go and get it tested, and we'll maybe see if we can squeeze that one through as another advisory.
The tyres and wheels are obviously a critical safety component, because these are what give you grip and give you the contact with the road. A couple of things you want to check for that will be considered for your MOT. First and foremost, we're going to start with the tread. The tread is the pattern on the inside of the tyre that ultimately creates the grip. What you need to have is a minimum depth of 1.6 millimeters in the central 3/4 of the tyre. That means the final eighth of each end is slightly different and not as considered to need quite as much there. You want that to be in the middle. That's in a bad case scenario. If you've got a bad tyre, it's still okay. If you've got 1.6 millimeters of tread in the middle 3/4 of that. Couple of ways you can check this. The easiest one is to get, this is a very rudimental tyre depth gauge, whereby you just push this piece into the tyre and the mark indicates where it is, and it even has a little marker on this one for where it should be, so that one is plenty fine. I could do that across the entire tyre. You can do this with a ruler if you need to, as long as the ruler starts at 0 rather than having a gap on it. And you could get many versions of this, but this is a very rudimental one that works perfectly fine. The other thing that you need to consider and check for your tyres is that there's no cracks, bulges or cords showing in the sidewall. The sidewall is this piece of the front face of the tyre. That's normally easy to see very easily and has probably caused you a problem before you're going to take it to its MOT anyway. The other thing you want to check for your wheels is that all of your lug nuts or your bolts are on and tight and secure, and that's the wheels checked. You are also going to want to make sure that your tyre pressures are okay. This should be part of your basic vehicle maintenance anyway. Couple of ways to do this. You can use a tyre pressure gauge checker. This one I plug on and it tells me what pressure they are at. You'll need to check for your car what the pressures should be. Most regular cars tend to be around 30 psi in each corner, but some of them vary, so do check what's specific for your vehicle. You'd be able to check this with one of those air compressor pumps if you've got one, because as you plug it onto the valve, it will show you the pressure. Or if you're using one of the machines at, say, a petrol garage, this will work in exactly the same way. But as mentioned, this should be part of your regular vehicle maintenance anyway. And the last tip for wheels and tyres, don't neglect your spare one. Make sure it's in good condition, make sure it's inflated. Now for this part of the pre-MOT checks, we're going to be concerned with the structure and bodywork of the car. The very first part of that to check is that the doors open and close securely. That's easy enough to do. You run around, open them all, close them all. If they have any hindrances, if one can't open, if it won't latch correctly, then you are going to need to get that sorted before you take the car for the MOT, if you're going to want it to pass. The other part with structural is you're going to need to have a look round or be aware of areas of the car rusting. It doesn't need to be any rust. Some rust is fine, and the older the car, you are going to have it. But you need to look for it in the structural areas. These can include, but are not limited to, the sills underneath here, because you will jack the car up at points there, and it's considered a structural point. So have a look under the car for that. Up in the wheel arches, sometimes even behind the liner. This car suffered from some rust there, because some genius at Ford thought a carpet rear wheel liner was a good idea to hold on to all of the water. You're going to want to check all around underneath where the arms for the suspension are joining into the car as well. And generally anything that is just way too rusty, that it's not going to be able to be strong enough anymore, is going to cause a problem. So it is worth, if possible, to get under the car and have a look for rust. The other thing to check for while you're under the car is any significant leaks, because these will be pulled up in the MOT. If your car is leaking a fluid that it primarily needs, that is going to cause an issue, and an excessive leak could cause a failure, particularly if it's a critical fluid. And the other thing you're just going to want to make sure you do, your number plates are clean and secured correctly, and you have both of them because you need two in the UK, unfortunately, because most cars would look better without the front one. So I envy the United States and the states in the United States that allow them people to run with no front plate. And you're going to want to make sure that there isn't anything that's very obviously dangerous or sharp. In my case, the spoiler potentially could be considered that if it was hanging a very long way off the back of the car. However, I think I'm going to be pretty safe because the lines in it are confined to within the body shape of the car, so nobody could walk into it. It couldn't hurt anybody before another piece of the car is impacting them anyway. No pedestrians walking into my wing and decapitating themselves. For this part of the video, in your pre-MOT checks, we're going to talk about the dark arts that is emissions testing. This is not something you could directly test at home, but it is something that you can be prepared for, and you can check the likelihood of being able to pass it. The first thing you want to do is start the car from cold and make sure when you do that and when you rev it, there isn't excessive smoke coming out of the back. Smoke in the exhaust is an indicator you're burning something you probably shouldn't be. So rather than just fuel and air, maybe oil is getting in there. That could lead you to fail the test and possibly indicate a larger problem with the vehicle generally. The other thing you're going to want to check is that the exhaust is secure and it's not rattling. You could do this by going under the car. It will move a little bit when you move it, but it shouldn't move a lot. This should be evident when you're driving the car because you will hear it clanging about if it is loose. The third thing to check is make sure the car has the catalytic converter if it's required for that vehicle, because that's responsible for cleaning, maintaining and holding a lot of the emission related foulness in a car's exhaust. And you're going to want to make sure, if you can, preferably with an OBD2 scanner, that there are no lambda related codes or errors coming up when you scan the car. The lambda sensors are what measure the mixtures of air, fuel and other things going through the exhaust to tell the ECU, the computer in the car, how much fuel and air to mix. And if they are having a fault, that could lead to a bad result when you go for your emissions test. A super top tip is something called an Italian tune-up. If your car is older and you're slightly worried about it getting through the emissions, take it for a good old drive, get the exhaust system really, really hot before you take it in for the MOT. Maybe give them a little nudge and ask them to do the emissions first. It's because when the car's warmed up, that can present better readings in the emissions testing machine and therefore make it more likely that the car is going to pass. Ask me how I know. So there we have it. We've run through our pre-MOT checks with things that we can do at home without the need of particularly any special tools, perhaps maybe bar an OBD2 scanner if you don't have one for your car already. If you found that video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'm now going to share with you a couple of top tips to do on top of what we've talked about to really help your car sail through its next MOT. The first one, wash your car. If you wash it on the outside and the car looks like it's looked after, the chances are the MOT tester is not going to look as deeply as they might do with a car that looks like it's been dragged out of a scrap heap. And clean the inside, because these people have to spend time in there. If they get in your car and it's all full of rubbish and dirt, they're not going to want to spend time in there and might be more likely to fail it on whatever they can find just so they can get out of it and get it away from themselves. The other thing, as we shared in the emissions element of this video, is the Italian tune-up. Take the car for a good blast, get it nice and hot before it goes in. If possible, urge them to do the emissions element of it as early as possible while it's still warm. That will give the car a better chance at passing its emissions. And by working your way through the list of things that we've looked at today, try and encounter and fix the cheap things and easy things that you can yourself. Things like bulbs. I keep a big supply of them in the garage because I have a few cars and bulbs do tend to go. Just get your bulbs changed if that was one of the things you could do. If you can see clearly that the tyres are going to need attention, go and get them changed before you take it for the MOT. Or the brakes. Sometimes you notice that the brakes, for example, are going to need attention. So book it in for a brake service and then an MOT. Normally could do it at the same garage at the same time. They'll do the work first and then put the car through its MOT. I really hope you found that video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel because I love doing car how-to videos and I want to make owning cars more fun and easy for as many people as possible. If even one more person is able to access the joy of owning cars to a higher level than just using it as a vehicle because they use this video, that for me is an absolute win. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video.